So here we go, our first ever show. I'm John Waters, Managing Director at Abercorn International Search, and we'd like to welcome you to Inspiring Careers. And I thought we would start with one of the stars of our industry. Melanie Evans, welcome to Inspiring Careers.
Thanks, John. It's very good to be here.
Oh, no, it's great to see you on a very hot Friday morning. Now, let me ask you this. Hey, how did you get started in our industry?
Well, non-traditional, actually.
Yeah.
So I did a business marketing degree, and then
Yes.
later on in my career, I did a Master's of Marketing. And I found my sweet spot in transformation. And, of course, technology is a huge part of that. And that's how I got into tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen your career grow, through Telstra and through KPMG, et cetera, and now you're the CIO at Ventia.
Yeah.
Tell me about the growth that you experienced at Telstra.
Yeah, Telstra is a great organisation where you can move around. So
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know, I don't think I actually managed my career that well. I think I moved around and I learnt from that. So I would say I started actively managing that towards the end of my career at Telstra, where I was really, really specific about what I would do.
Now, can I ask you this? Did you move around because they actually saw that you were a young talent, if you like, and they were giving you specific programs to run?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you started off in marketing and then you went into IT transformation there as well? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was asked to lead some various projects where I set up capabilities in the organisation. So I learned a lot about operating model and change management and building products.
Yes.
Working with engineering, and then actually someone said to me when I came back from maternity leave, they said, maybe you should go into IT. And I said, well, I don't really know much about IT. And they go, yes, you do. You built products, you're working with engineering, you're working with IT. How do you not know about IT? So I went and actually did a whiteboard with the lady who was recruiting in IT. And I thought it was awesome. We had a really great conversation. And then at the end of it, she said, I really want someone technical. And I said, well, that's not me.
Yeah.
And I left. And a couple of weeks later, she said to me, well, why haven't you applied? And I said, well, because you said you wanted someone technical. And she said, don't be silly, you need to apply. And that's where I got my start, because fundamentally, John, someone backed me.
Yes.
And that's how I got my start in tech.
Yeah. So on that basis, and we can even translate that into, say, KPMG and also your current role, do you therefore come at these technology roles from a business and people's perspective rather than being deeply technical?
Yes. Well, certainly that's where I've come from. And when I started in tech, absolutely, it was a massive change. I don't think many people did it at that time when I made the change.
Yes.
And I had to back myself, and I came from it from an angle of business outcomes and also being that kind of intermediary where I could work with highly technical people and then work with the business to help them understand, why it was important or what the business outcomes would be.
Yeah. And I noticed actually the other day that there's a very senior lady that who's just got the CEO role at NBN. So what I'm interested in is that during your time there, you obviously work with some very, very talented people. Were there any particular people there who were a great influence on you and who even still act as mentors for you?
There was a couple of people, and I feel I'm at risk if I call out their names
because
there's so many. And
I
feel like I'd be leaving people out because actually there are so many people that support you along the way, and it's sort of how you lean into that and build those relationships.
Yes.
And I had very specific sponsors, mentors, and also coaches. And I had a really great sponsor when I moved into IT. But before that, I had a really great sponsor when I was doing a chief of staff role. And she really sponsored me to help me understand the business, how to present at a senior level. And that really, I think, accelerated my career. And then when I moved into tech, the lady that hired me actually didn't stay very long. So I came under with the new leader, and he, even today, still supports me in the background, very much someone that I'd talk to and get advice. And I think they're really important to have.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And then you've gone to KPMG. Did you feel that you wanted to go and do something a little bit different, more in that consulting world? What was the reason why you chose that career path next?
Well, I was at Telstra for 10 years, and I felt that potentially I was sort of being, I only knew telco, so I'd been in a particular industry for a long time.
Yes.
And so the reason for moving to consulting was more about, the opportunity to learn across different industries and get different skills. And consulting really gives you, from my perspective, I hadn't really been exposed to a sales environment before.
Yes.
So at Telstra, I didn't work in the sales team at all throughout my career. So sales was a big part of it, and learning, and then also working across teams that, say, maybe weren't your direct team. So learning to lead cross-functionally and to have people working for you, and you had to very quickly establish teams versus a very traditional organisation that has a hierarchy where you are the manager because those people are in your team.
Yeah, no, that's good. And can I be a little bit cynical and say that, therefore, in the current role at Ventia, having learned all these selling skills, etc., has that allowed you to be able to engage better and understand better your vendors when they're approaching you with various solutions? Yeah.
So I'm a high collaborator.
Yes.
I partner really well internally, externally, and absolutely I think selling, influencing, so being able to articulate what you're trying to achieve and take people on a journey is really important. So absolutely I think it's all of those skills that help you. Yeah.
Tell me about your team at Ventia. How diverse and how big is it?
So the team at Ventia, we've created, since I've been there, in particular focusing on some new areas. So we've got a great team that I would say have been there a number of years through the acquisition, and those team members are just invaluable in terms of their knowledge. And then I brought in new leaders as well and team members that really kind of brought to light that knowledge combined with new capabilities. So things like that you just mentioned. So partnering with our alliances and our digital partners. So we do a lot of that work. Someone very specific around data and AI. So we had capabilities there, but we didn't have a leader focused on that. So brought that capability in. And I've combined some of the areas, so our operations, our cloud infrastructure, our applications, and our security. So I brought that together.
Yes.
And then probably the other capability that I introduced was our business development, so our business partnering, our demand management, and business development we put together into a capability. So where I've got people working in partnering with the business, but also externals as we're working on our bids and things.
Now, that's interesting. Does that therefore mean, and excuse my ignorance, does that mean that you've actually put a function into your organisation where you're helping the company to generate revenue as well as managing the IT organisation?
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's very much a journey, John.
Yeah.
But yes, that's my interest. So when I joined Ventia, I wasn't wanting to just do a back office role.
Yes.
I wanted to use the skills that I had to be able to still be in the industry and working with partners and our clients, and then also, of course, doing the back office capabilities. So yes, we work in the context of, say, the bids that we're working on will be solutioning, so working out what solutions will give us differentiation in the market, how we bring in digital capabilities, so very much so really trying to drive solutions and innovation through that team.
And, the board and the CEO, et cetera, they've been quite receptive because that will be a new concept for them, having a CIO who's actually helping them to generate revenue and win deals.
Well, I'm not sure they see it that way yet. Like I said, it's a journey. However, I know that they can see the contribution and the change in terms of the relationships that we formed, how we're very much immersed in those bids.
Yes.
And we're very much teaming across the different sectors and with our clients to come up with solutions that are innovative and that include a big digital piece, as that's very much a focus for us.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Now, you've been in leadership roles now for, 10, 12 years. What sort of leader would you describe yourself as, and what sort of leader, if you like, do you want to be?
So I would say I'm very, very humble. I come at leadership from the perspective of how would I want to be treated, or how would I want to be led.
Yeah.
I put a lot of faith and trust in my people.
Yeah.
And I'm very much lived by my values of courage and kindness. Came from a Cinderella movie.
Very
with
good.
my daughter John.
Yes.
And the reason it's top of mind is last night we had her last service in the church for Year 6.
Yes.
And she wrote me a letter, and reminded me of, and she put a quote in there around courage and kindness.
We will explore that because I'm very interested in what you do away from work to relax. Yeah. What I'm curious about, therefore, is that when you're hiring, therefore, what do you look for in a potential employee?
Yeah, so I look for people that are honest, and there's that whole thing of where you say, "Well, be authentic," but
yes.
What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
So can people just be themselves? And I'm very big on bring yourself to work, bring your whole self to work.
Yes. Yes.
And it took me a long time to do that myself as a leader. So that's as much about me.
Was that a confidence thing? Why was that? Sorry.
Yeah, I think. I don't know if it's the world's changed or I've just matured in my thinking, but
yes.
I feel like previously in my career, and certainly as you're sort of moving up the ranks, I feel like actually you sort of keep your work and your personal life quite separate, or
yes.
I did.
Yes.
I separated the two. And as I got more senior and more comfortable, I guess, with myself, I share a lot more of my personal life as well.
Yes.
And I bring that in. So I guess I look for people that are comfortable, that are true to themselves, that are adaptable, because things change. So I do say to the team often that I know people sometimes get afraid of change. I love change myself personally, and I share that. But I think there's also the degree of technology's changing. Life changes, it changes pretty quick, and it's often changing. So people that are adaptable to change and are able to make those shifts, and it's not sort of an anchor to them. So it's something that they can move.
Yeah, no, that's and on that basis, I mean, you guys have won several awards this year, which obviously shows that you're doing something right. Do you therefore try and get a little bit of a social element in some of your team building where they are allowed to engage and bring some of their family members along, etc.? Hey?
Yeah. So last year we did a really lovely sort of Christmas. It was just an informal event where we said bring your families, and we built gingerbread houses and that type of thing. I take my daughter personally. I take her on a number of trips, particularly if it's school holidays.
Yes.
And often, and I'm a single mum, so often sometimes there's not a babysitter or there's not someone and she ends up at a dinner. I'm very flexible, and I do say that with the team. It doesn't matter if you've got kids, someone's always dealing with something, whether it's older family members, whether it's, animals that they're looking after. Life is not just as simple as come to work and we're all perfect. So I'm very much about bringing that in.
Yeah. And you've always struck me as a lass who's very magnanimous in terms of encouraging other people to grow, right? What do you do for you? What do you do, for example, to keep up with some of the trends that are happening in the industry?
I'm not great at, I would say I don't have a long commute. So I know you have a bit of a commute, right? And you can catch up, and a lot of people do. So I don't have that time. So I've got to make time for myself to do that investment. So I would say reading, a lot of reading. So I have a consulting habit of making sure I read the papers in the morning.
Yes.
That's really important.
Yeah.
And it gives you a business perspective as well of what's happening. And then I would say I use more hands-on to educate, because there's so much. So of course I keep up with AICD. I think that's fundamental.
Yes.
I subscribe and got a partnership with Gartner, for example. So I do sessions with analysts, and I read a lot of their papers, because I think some of that thinking is fantastic.
Yes.
But then I work with the software partners as well.
So would you invite some of the guys and ladies in just to have a chat with them for an hour and get your team in?
Yes.
And have an open forum just to bounce a few ideas around?
Yeah, and hands-on. Getting them to share some of their developments and investments in technology, because they're the market, they're the leaders, right, in terms of the hyperscalers and those investments in AI. So yes, absolutely.
Well, when you talk about AI, et cetera, one of the questions I was going to ask is, what sort of trends are you keeping an eye out for? I'm going to impromptu throw that around a bit and say, on that basis, are there 2 or 3 things that you've done with new trends or new technologies from an innovation perspective, perhaps at Ventia, that you're particularly proud of your team for implementing?
Yes, well, I would say, so to answer the question, I would say the trends that I'm keeping my eye on are probably more on a personal perspective. So I'm very interested in the impact of technology on young ones.
Yes.
And the change and impact, that devices and that sort of change is having with kids that have grown up with them versus kids that haven't.
Yes.
So I'm very interested in that. But from the angle of mental health, so how are we, making sure that we're still, if you look around often at restaurants and things, you see people have got their heads down and phones. So how are we managing that so that we're embracing the new technology to get ahead, but then also we've got that balance. So I'm very interested in that. And then secondly, I'd say from an innovation perspective, and I mean, everyone's talking about AI really, but that's been an area that I've been proud of with the team because we've invested in sort of that practical application.
Yes.
So things like RegTech. So people in the office being able to find things in policies really quickly through basic questions versus having to search through, find the answers and taking that time. So we're testing different things that will have an impact with our team members and then things to help them to do their jobs. So things like proposals, so investing in how we can speed up proposal processes and that type of thing as well.
No, that's excellent. Let's look at you. What do you do now? And we've both got a great interest, funny enough, in the AICD. I thought their courses were fantastic. What do you do now for your own personal development?
So I use my network and I'm curious about what other people do. I go to industry events. I do the networking, but I would say I'm quite selective about that as well, given I've got family responsibility. So I know for some people that's not always easy.
Well, the other thing is, hey, and I'm not being sycophantic, you're in a high-profile job.
Yeah.
So everybody wants a piece of you these days.
Yes.
You know?
And that becomes a challenge as well because I want to help and give and sometimes I say yes and it becomes really hard to deliver on because I'm sort of trying to help everyone and give everyone some time. But I'd say for my development, I invest one-on-one with, and people like yourself, people that I've got trusted relationships with that I can have open conversations that I can say, hey, I got this feedback. Like, what should I do with that? I can really have an honest conversation and then you can get perspectives from others going, you know what, you should maybe think about it that I've noticed that in you. But, and focusing on your strengths as well, because I always say that you get a lot of feedback.
Yes.
Particularly when you get more and more senior and you get feedback from everywhere. And it's about what do you do with that feedback? And sometimes it's, you don't do anything with it. It's something to be aware of, or sometimes it's something like, actually, I need to focus on that for my own development. So what sort of change am I going to make? And how are people going to notice? Because it's one thing to say I'm going to do something, but it's another for people to say, I've really noticed that change in Mel. And so that's been a bit of a different way of thinking for me when it comes to my development around what would I want that change to look like?
Actually, let's look at that, right? So I don't know you as a kid, right? But I presume that you would have been a nice lass and pretty outgoing. You do a lot of public speaking now. I'm outside my comfort zone doing this for the first time. Were you always good at public speaking, or is it something that you had to work on?
No, of course not. I don't. Well, don't they say that public speaking, people are more afraid of public speaking than dying?
Well,
it's like the number one fear.
Every time I see you in action, I think you're very natural at it.
Well, no, I'm like everyone else. I think the more you do it. So what I would say is you build a muscle. So when you get asked, the natural reaction for me is like, I want to be behind the scenes. I want to head down. I want to deliver. I'm very much focused on delivery. I don't want to be at the centre. I don't want all the limelight to be on me.
The modern concepts called servant leadership, if you like, where you like to enable your team.
Correct.
And you like to support them, but you want them to be in the front line.
Yes.
When it comes to the congratulations, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather put my team forward to speak and me be in the background. And I've had to really push myself. So I would say, John, my development area this year was actually I need to lean into this. if I want to continue to progress in my career, it's important that I start to invest in this. So that would be why I think you'd say, well, I've seen you do this a lot. It's because I've invested in it. And it is that thing of building a muscle. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become with yourself.
Yeah, no, that's good. So let me ask you this. You've had a lot of achievements.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of in your career up to this point? And I know you've still got a lot of good points ahead of you, but any one or two things that you've done at Telstra, KPMG, at Ventia, and you feel that's a great example of some of my capability, if you like?
I would say it's probably more courage. So what I'm most proud of is the steps that I've taken in my career where I've made a big change and I've backed myself, because I think that that in itself is a massive achievement. So it's not so much the tangible project outcomes. I think they're the things that you're just kind of expected to do in the job. But then also the other big thing that I would say that I'd call out is the leadership and supporting team members to make them more successful. So I'm most proud of, I remember back in Telstra actually, where I had a team member that I coached and supported and helped develop them. And the thing that I was most proud of them was getting them to be a peer of mine. So getting them promoted and getting them to be a peer. I would say it's the same now, the same concept with my team and people that I might support outside of the role is how can I support and help them and progress in their journey? So that's really important to me. So I'd say they're the two areas I'm most proud of.
Yeah. So you mentioned sponsors in your career. So if you like, you've got sponsors, mentors, coaches, and I think to be fair with your style, you're very good at all three. Have you come across mentors, coaches, sponsors for you personally?
Yeah, so I would say actually in my career, John, I actually had or focused on mentors.
Okay.
And then as I progressed, I realised there were differences in those roles and the importance of those roles. And so mentors to me are someone that you go and they will actively be able to have conversations around certain things that you might be facing. So that could be internal or external. Generally, I think having a mentor externally is better because they're able to give you an objective perspective and some advice. A coach to me is more around, hey, I've got this presentation coming up to the board. And I want to test with you and I want to get some help on how best to present that, and they would coach you through that particular situation. Now, a sponsor for me is someone who would absolutely be saying, and now Mel has been working on this, or I would like Mel to come in and do this. So it means going to sessions and actually in meetings and sponsoring the individual. And I would say in my career, how I've got to where I have is because I've had all three.
Now, on that basis, do you therefore put time into that now where you say, well, I want to keep coaching and sponsoring people and I want to keep talking to my mentors? So do you make time for you, say, where you may talk to a coach once a month or a mentor once a month? Or is it ad lib? I'm just curious for our audience if you formulate a specific strategy on that, or it's more ad lib?
So, yes, I do it for me personally. Sometimes it's more structured than others. Let's be honest. Life gets in the way. So sometimes I'm really structured and I'll make sure I've got sessions booked in. And I do. And there'll be periods where I would use a coach or I would use a mentor more specifically or a sponsor more specifically. But then there are times where I would just, manage my network and, lean in from a relationship perspective. But I would say I often give that advice to people that come and sit down and say, can I have a coffee with you? And I'd like to have a chat, or can I get advice of what you would do? These are the things that I share because these are the things that have made a difference to me.
Yeah. Well, on that basis, I think you're very lucky having worked for Telstra for many years, because Telstra has had so many great people coming through who are either still there or have gone on to bigger and better jobs elsewhere, who would certainly fulfill all three categories, if you like. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, so there are a number of people that I still talk to in that capacity from Telstra, or who are either still there or have moved on in other places. But I would also say there are people in my team as well that have come from Telstra. So yeah, I think Telstra's a really great organisation who invests in their people, and certainly invested a lot in me. And I absolutely benefit from doing that throughout my journey there.
Are there any formal courses that people can do to actually enhance their skills, even as a professional coach or a mentor?
So I think there is, if you wanted to go down that path. But I think just thinking about it in that context. So it's a bit about self-reflection and working out, do I have a sponsor? Is there someone actively helping me progress in this organisation? And if there isn't, then you might need to think about that, because I think it's really important to have some sponsors to help you progress. And then think about, well, where are some of the areas that I need development? Well, do I need some coaching in that area? And that's how you can really then, build that muscle or that skill or that capability to achieve in that area. So I'd say really sit down and do that reflection, because if you don't have that support sort of structure set up, it's difficult, I think, to progress without having that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That is excellent. Well, actually, in a sense, and I can say this as an observer, as a guy who's sort of been a headhunter for X amount of years, that you've had 3 distinct career runs where you've done roles at Telstra, then you've gone to a tier 1 consultancy, then you've become a CIO.
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe, and I'm going to give you a plug here, that with your AICD background, etc., in years to come, you're going to be a wonderful board member for some of these emerging Australian corporations or ASX 1 or 200 companies, etc. Is that something that you would do in the future?
Yeah, I'd say I'm definitely interested in that aspect, and would love to do that in the future. And I loved, actually, the course that I did at the AICD was amazing. It was one of the best. I always talk about it as one of the best courses I'd done.
Yeah.
And I definitely have an interest, and I think it alerts you to the fact of how serious the role is, and how much responsibility and accountability you take becoming a board member. And so for me, I've done a little bit from a not-for-profit perspective. Because it was an area I was passionate about. But yes, absolutely, in the future it'd be something that I'd want to do.
Yeah. Now listen, you mentioned your young lady earlier. Everybody's obviously looking for their work-life balance.
Yeah.
What's your favourite hobby away from work?
Walking the dog. It's simple things, John.
Yes.
So walking the dog, we do silly things. My daughter's 12, so we're still kind of running around, playing hide and seek and that sort of thing. But also those things keep you in the moment, which I think is really important, and you can appreciate life and do those things. So for me, it's practical, everyday things that give me energy. So, and we also do things like random look on the map and find somewhere to explore in our area on the weekend. So we'll go for walks and look for different things, and I don't know, count colours of doors and collect things. So, but for me, they're the things that, they're simple. They're fun, and you can just be there. Just be there in the moment, have a chat.
Well, you're very lucky. I mean, I can safely say, as the personal servant of 2 adult kids who I love to death, it's great that you've got such a good relationship with your young lady. Now, I'm going to ask you one question in conclusion, and it's the most important question of the show.
Okay.
So, what advice do you have for any young people starting in our industry?
So if you're starting in technology, I would say be curious, learn about business, because I always say to people it's not about putting in the tech, because we can put in any great technology, but actually real success is the combination of technology. It's a combination of people. It's a combination of process and data, and how that all comes together actually will be the change and will deliver the business outcomes that you're looking to get to. So I would say get in and understand those. So even if you're highly technical, a developer, or if you're in a role in security, get to understand what it means, because that's what will drive investment, and that's what will drive different outcomes.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for you then?
What does the future hold? For me, continued development and more focus on mental health and well-being. And the reason I say that is I'm a big believer in building more of those muscles outside of work to give you better quality of life. So you asked me about work-life balance, and you asked me about those type of aspects and how I make it all work. And I think the way that you do make it work is to invest in yourself more. And for me, I always put that at the back. So it's sort of like, daughter, family first, you put your career for second, and then you kind of get to yourself. And so more and more, I'm thinking about how I invest in better quality of sleep, and all those things that I think make a big impact.
Yeah, no, I'm delighted with that. Well, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you. It's our first ever show. I've got no idea how long it lasted. It may be short compared to some of the ones in the future. But as a lady that I've known for many years and always admired, I just want to thank you for coming on Inspiring Careers. My name is John Waters. I'm Managing Director at Abercorn International Search. That's our first show. We will also have a Christmas edition coming up, but I'd just like to thank Mel. It's been a great experience for me, and it's certainly pushed me outside my comfort zone. So thank you, everyone, for watching.